Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Kansas City Real Estate Podcast, the podcast built to help you pass your real estate exam and launch your career with confidence. I'm your host, Joe Stephenson, and today we're tackling one of the most important concepts you'll need to understand for the Kansas real estate exam: brokerage relationships under the Kansas BRRETA law. Section 1. What is BRRETA? BRRETA stands for the Brokerage Relationships in Real Estate Transactions Act. In Kansas, this law outlines exactly how real estate licensees must disclose their role in a transaction, whether they're representing a buyer, a seller, or just facilitating as a neutral party. The minute you start working with someone in a real estate transaction, especially in residential real estate, you're expected to hand them a brochure titled Real Estate Brokerage Relationships. And here's the key. This has to happen at the first practical opportunity. That means essentially right when you meet them. Section 2, the 3 types of relationships. So what exactly are the types of brokerage relationships? There are 3 main ones in Kansas. Seller's agent, you represent the seller exclusively. Buyer's agent, you represent the buyer exclusively. Transaction broker, you assist both sides, but don't represent either as a fiduciary. Now, here's something Kansas does differently. If there is no written agency agreement in place, the default role for all licensees is that of a transaction broker. That means if you haven't signed a buyer or seller agency agreement, you're legally not allowed to give advice, suggest negotiation strategies, or talk about confidential info. You're just there to help move the paperwork. Section 3, when the brochure is not required. Let's talk about the exceptions. There are some scenarios where you're not required to give that brokerage relationships brochure. For example, if you're acting solely for yourself, like buying a home as your personal investment. If you're just advertising your services. If it's a commercial property with more than 4 units. Or if you're just answering basic questions about a listing, like giving the price over the phone. Always remember, this requirement is for residential transactions only. Section 4, important rules about written agreements. Let's talk paperwork. If you want to act as a seller's agent, your agreement has to be in writing before you start any agency duties. For buyers, the rule is slightly different. The agency agreement must be signed no later than the time the buyer signs an offer. All agency or transaction brokerage agreements must include a fixed expiration date, any confidentiality limitations and compensation terms, and references to your duties under Kansas law. Section 5, a word about dual agency. Now, here's a big one. Kansas does not allow dual agency.
If you find yourself representing both the buyer and the seller in the same deal, you have to convert to a transaction broker. And this switch has to be documented using a TBA form. That's the transaction broker addendum, signed by both parties before the contract is finalized. Okay, so that was a lot of info, but if you're preparing for the Kansas real estate exam, this is absolutely crucial. Know the difference between agent and transaction broker. Always disclose at the first opportunity. Get your agreements in writing and never act like an agent unless you actually are one in writing. If you found this helpful, hit that subscribe button and check out our other episodes on license law violations, contract rules, and fair housing. I'm Joe Stephenson, and I'll see you next time on Real Estate Ready, Kansas edition.